Well, hello Internet, and welcome to what should be a pretty interesting tutorial. I had announced that I was going to make a SwiftUI iPhone weather app, and I got a whole bunch of questions about how to actually get weather data. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to decode OpenWeather JSON data using Swift. Alright, so the very first thing you need to do is go and get an OpenWeather account. The ones I'm going to be using are going to be 100% free. So just go to openweathermap.org, and you see here the 5-day forecast. I'm going to actually show you how to parse a simple JSON data piece of information and then a pretty complicated one as well. So you're going to want to come in here and click on Sign Up, which is at the top of the screen. And you're going to have to enter in all of your account information and then click on Create Account. Then if you click on API, you're going to be able to click on API Keys, which is right here to generate a key. And you're also going to be able to click on API up here at the top to see the different types of data you can get. This one is free and this one is free. There's other ones that are not free, but these two are. And this is going to be the basic weather information, current weather data. And then I'm also going to show you how to get the 5-day forecast data. So once again, if you just click on your name up here, it says hello Derek Banis, but if you click on your name, you're going to be sent to this page. You can click on API keys then, and you'll be able to generate API keys. Alright, so I think that's all we need to talk about in regards to getting all that together, and now I'm going to start writing some code. Alright, so we're going to be working with Xcode, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say File and New, and we're going to do all this inside of a playground, and I'm just going to have this be blank and click on Next. And then I have to go and give it a name, and I am going to call this JSON Weather Data, just to give it a name, and click on Create, and here we are. And the only thing I need to do to import here is a foundation, and I can get rid of Hello Playground, don't need that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my API key inside of here, but I'm not going to show you what it is because I don't want it to be overrun. So you're going to put in whatever your API key is right inside of there. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off by coding just basic JSON data. So I'm actually going to get this data right here, and you can see how everything is broken down, and I'll walk you through how to get all the information we need. But basically what we're going to be looking to get is the temperature, which is right here, and also I'm going to get the humidity. Later on, we'll get into the more complicated stuff here with the forecast, but we're going to start off simple there. So I want to copy this, and then inside of here, I'm going to say let JSON data, and this is going to be of type data, and this is going to be an optional, which is everything inside of Swift. And I'm going to put in 3 double quotes, and then I'm going to put in 3 more double quotes, and then I'm going to paste in all that JSON data. Okay, so I have everything inside of there. One thing I'm going to have to do, however, is I need to convert this string into a data type. And by data type, I mean of type data. And to do that, you just go using .utf8, and then that error message will go away. Alright, so we have our JSON data, and I'm also going to show you how to do this by grabbing the URL and doing everything online. So this tutorial is going to cover everything. Alright, so what I need to do here is I need to use what is called the Decodable protocol to add the ability to decode this JSON data from outside sources. And how you do that is you actually create a struct and you model what you want to get from this data. So I'm going to call this struct weather main, and the Decodable protocol is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use decodable later, but basically what Decodable does is allows you to encode and decode JSON data. So what I said that I want to get the temperature, which is right here, and I said that I wanted to get humidity. And I just picked these 2 things just because, I just wanted to pick 2 different things. All right, so what you do is you can just throw in temp, which is the name that you have right there. And then you have to define the data type, which is a double. And we're going to do exactly the same thing for our humidity. So humidity, and this is also going to be a double. So you can see there's temp, that's a double, and there's humidity, and it's an integer, but I'm just going to call it a double. All right, so you go and structure that. And now what you can do is, well, I'm going to actually call this weather, and then I am going to target this guy right here, which is going to be main inside of our data. So I want to target main, and then I want to get temperature and humidity out of it. So what I have to do here is to create another struct, but this one is going to be for main. So I'm going to call it weather main and codable, just like we did before. And inside of it, I just go let and main and weather, and there we go. So what we're able to do is target main inside of here, right there, with this guy, and it's automatically going to pull in that data. And then I specifically say that this is of type weather, and I want to get the temperature and the humidity from it. All right, so how do I actually make this so? Well, I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call this decode JSON data, and I'm going to pass in the data that we have here, and data like that. And like I said, I'm going to show you how to get all this information online as well. So then inside of a do block, what we're going to do is go let weather data equal to try with a question mark, and this is going to allow our result to contain nil if that should occur, which it should not. And we will say JSON decoder, and the JSON decoder object is going to decode from JSON to the weather main struct using the provided JSON data that we have. So I'm going to get this guy, and then we say decode, and then you put inside of here weather main and from JSON data. So here's weather main, and it's going to work through that data that is in this string up inside of here. Then I'm going to say if we have weather data, then weather will be equal to weather data main. And then what I can do is go and get the temperature and the humidity and output it on the screen. So I'll say weather temp, and I'm going to force unwrap it with that because this is an optional, and paste that in there. And I got the temperature and the humidity. And then we can go and call our function. So let's just paste that inside of there. And then JSON data is what we will be passing into it. So we can just go down here, JSON data, and maybe we should call this data just so that it's not confusing, like that. And throw data inside of there, and throw in an exclamation mark. And if we run it, you can see that it was able to grab the 41.5 and the 80 out of there. And if you check up here, temperature is 41.5 and humidity is 80. So you might not be impressed with that because I didn't get that information from on the web. So now I will show you how to do that. All right, so I'm going to create a new function, and I'm going to call this pull JSON data. And this is going to be used for both getting our simple weather data as well as getting our forecast, which has a ton of data to work through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say forecast, and this is going to be a Boolean, and of course it's going to be passed a URL inside of there. So what we're going to have to do here is create a URL session, and it's going to provide the shared object, which is going to contain the data task function, which is going to be used to retrieve data from the provided URL. So we'll go URL session shared and data task, and the URL is just going to be the URL passed inside of here. So I will say URL, and I have to unwrap that. And then we will be getting data and a response and an error, potentially. Then what I want to do is catch any errors. So I'll say if let error, and in this situation, I'm just going to print out whatever the error could have possibly been. So error, and how you do that is you say error dot localized description. Then another error that could have occurred is if we receive a response code that isn't 200. 200 means everything went fine. So I'm going to check the response code. And to do that, I'm going to say guard let response and equal to response as, and I want this to be cast or downcast what will be a URL response to an HTTP URL response, and response status code equal to 200, which means everything was fine. Else, in that situation in which we got something that was not 200, I'm going to print another error. So I'll say error, and we know that this is going to be an HTTP response code error because that's what we're checking for. And then we need to say return. All right. What else do we want to check for? Well, we want to check if there is data. So I'm going to say guard let data equal to data, else we got another error, and we'll say error, and we'll say no response, and return from that. Now, if all that went fine, well then we know that we can decode our data. So I'm going to say, and I also set up here that I want this to work for the forecasting data as well as the simple weather data. So I'm going to say if not forecast data, so if we're not trying to get forecast data, well then I'm going to call a function called decode JSON data and JSON data and else I'm going to call another function. I'm just going to say else whatever. I'm not going to put anything inside of there right now. And then after we have all of that set up, we're going to, after we created our task, we need to execute it. And to do so, you say task and resume like that. And then we can test out our code to see if it worked. So I'm going to say that I want to define a city, and I'm going to define a super city called Pittsburgh, which happens to be where I live. And then with that, I'm going to inject the city as well as the API key into our URL. So I'm going to say URL is equal to URL and string. And then I have to go and put in the weather data URL that I need. So to save some time, I'm going to go grab the URL. I'm going to go and put my API key inside of here. And you could put your API key inside of there. And then I'm also going to put my city inside of here, right like that. So there we go. Now we got our URL. And now I should be able to just come in here and go and call pull JSON data and pass in the URL. And the forecast in this situation is going to be false because I don't want the forecast information. I want to use the simple weather data information. And I ran it, and I got an HTTP response code error. Let's see if we can figure out why. Oh, I see what I did. I need to come in here and go and units equals imperial. Run it again, and boom. We got our current temperature as well as the humidity. So pretty awesome stuff. Now what we're going to do is do something a lot more complicated. We're going to figure out how to go and work with the forecast JSON data. All right, so I'm going to try and grab all of the most important information out of here. What's the most important information if you're making a weather app? Well, you're going to need the temperature, the feels like, temperature minimum, temperature max, anything else here, the humidity, and then you're also going to want the main weather as well as the description of the weather. And then I'm also going to use this icon thing here because I want to be able to generate a icon to go along with the weather. Now there's some things to look at here. All right, so how's this information organized? Well, we want to grab this information, which is a list, and we know it's a list because of this guy right here, and it is called list. So we have to grab that information, and then we also need to come in here and grab weather, which is right here, and this is going to contain all of our weather information that we talked about before. And again, this is another list, as we can see right there. So we have to grab multiple lists to grab all of this information. And then on top of that, this, just want to point out, this is a list right here, all of this information, as you can see with the brackets, inside of a list. And so we're going to go and model that inside of structs. So pretty crazy stuff here. So right after I have here decode JSON data, I'm going to come in and throw in my new structs modeling what I need. So what I need first is I need a list that is called list. So I'm going to go struct, and I'm just going to call this weather data. And I'm going to use decodable here because I need to decode this information. I don't need to encode it. If you put codable, it allows you to decode and encode, but I only need to decode. So that's what I'm going to do. So what did I say? Well, it is a list called list. So we're going to put list right here. And that name list is going to match up with the name list inside of the JSON data. And what exactly is it? Well, it is a list. So we'll put it inside the brackets like that. All right, now we have to continue modeling this information out, and we're going to do it in steps. So this is a list of lists, but we have other things. We want to also get main inside of it. So I'm going to go struct, and I'm going to call it main, and decodable. And this main, well, I'm going to go and type everything in. So I'm going to go let temp, and this is a float. And these things all match up with the JSON names. So temp max, also a float, and also temp min, also a float. I'll show you in a second where this is coming from. Let feels like, and it's very important to have these names be exactly the same as they are used in the JSON, because that's how it parses all this information and decodes it for us. If it's different, it won't work. All right, so remember this: temp, temp max, temp min, feels like, and humidity. We'll open this up, and you can see here is main, and these look familiar: temp, feels like, temp min, temp max, and humidity. All right, same exact names, and this is a float, this is a float, this is a float. That's how I define it. I'm modeling the data. Okay, but I still have to do more. So what else do we need to model? Well, I'm also going to have the weather part of it. So I'm going to go struct, but I already used weather here, so I'm going to say weather2. Doesn't matter what this name is. Decodable. You can call it whatever you want. And what we're looking for specifically here is the main part, which is a string. And I'll show you where this is coming from here in a second. And the description, which is also a string, and then also the icon, which is also a string. Okay, so where is this coming from? Okay, so what am I matching up with this time? I'm matching up with weather, right there, the name weather, and then main, description, and icon. All right, so that's how those are going to be mapped out. As you can see there, same exact name. And then finally, what I need to do is create another struct, and this is going to represent the list for all the data, which is this guy up inside of here. So I have to model that. And again, this is decodable. And the two names that I'm looking for inside of this list is main, and that's going to be mapped to this main right here. That guy right there is this guy right here. And then also I'm going to have weather, which is actually going to be a list of weather 2 types, which is going to contain main, description, and icon. See, we have lists inside of lists, which is causing a little bit of a complication. But this main and this weather is exactly the same as this main right here and this weather. And as you can see here with main, we're not dealing with lists. We're just dealing with the data. However, with weather, we are dealing with lists, as you can see with that bracket right there. So that's what causes a little bit of confusion. Hopefully it's not confusing to you though. All right, so we mapped out exactly how we're going to be grabbing that data. And now what I need to do is go and decode the JSON for it. So I'm going to say function decode JSON, and this is going to be forecast. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go grab all this data and then print it out on the screen. And I thought this would make most sense because you have mins and maxes across an entire day. What you're going to have to do is grab that data, throw it in, and then pick whatever the min and max is. So I'm just going to output it on the screen. So I'm going to say let response equal to try and JSON decoder. Okay, it's going to decode the JSON just like I described previously. All this is the same. And then what I'd have to do is pass in weather data, which is this guy right here. So it's a list that contains lists of all this other information inside of it. And then from and JSON data. And then after I do that, I'm not going to check for all these different potential errors. I'm going to grab all this information. So I'm going to say for I in response list, and then I will print out all of the weather information across all of the data that is stored inside of here. So I'm going to say the temperature and go and get the temperature. And because this is a list, I'm going to go I, and then I'm going to say if I want to specifically get the temperature, well, that's in the main part of how I have all this defined. And I'm going to do the same sort of thing for all of these. I'm going to have to do a special thing whenever I get to the weather part because it's a list inside of a list, which causes all kinds of confusion. So I'm going to also show you how to get the temperature max, which is going to be min temp, and then it's going to be max like that. And then we'll also have our temperature minimum, which is going to be temp and min. See, these line up. See, temp, min, and all this stuff. What else do we want to get? Well, I'm going to get feels like, and that's going to be in feels like. And we will also get humidity. So change this to humidity and main, and this will be humidity. And since the weather is stored as an array, I'm going to have to cycle through it. So I'm going to say for j in I dot weather, and then I'll print out all of the string descriptions of what's going on with the weather. So the main weather description is going to be retrieved by saying j main, and then I'm going to do the same sort of thing for the description. So this is description. Whoops, don't put capitals inside of there. Description, there we go. And I'll change this to description. And then what else? The icon also. And I'll grab the icon and throw the icon inside of there. All this code's available in the description, by the way, if I haven't said that about 10 times. Okay, what else do we want to do here? Well, that's basically it. So now what I need to do is go and get the forecast URL. So I'm going to create URL 2, and then the only difference between this is forecast, and this one is weather. Everything else is exactly the same, except the data is a lot more complicated to deal with, obviously. And then I'm just going to go pull JSON data like this, paste that inside of there. And I'm also going to change this to URL 2 for our new URL and change this to true because we're pulling in the forecast data. And I'm going to have to come up inside of here where it has pull JSON data. And it says if not forecast, we're going to deal with that part. And in this one, I will change this. It's going to be slightly different. Decode JSON. And this is called forecast, right? Yes, forecast. So let's just go and grab this and come down inside of here. And we'll just paste that right there. And now it'll get the right function and we can run it. And you can see it worked. All right, isn't that awesome? So we grabbed all of that information that we wanted. You can see there's all the information which you can cycle through and put in the right places. Got the temperature, temperature max, temperature minimum, feels like, humidity, and the description of the weather. All right, so super awesome stuff. Showed you 3 different ways of working with JSON data as well as how to pull information from the OpenWeather API. Hopefully that's useful to somebody. And like always, please leave your questions and comments down below. Otherwise, till next time.